Okay, should you speak up only on matters of human rights and remain silent about the inner workings of the government under the circumstances? We'll ask our panelists next. Stay with us, Passion for Truth. 5 years after one of the worst episodes of Hindu-Muslim violence in Gujarat, a series of videotaped confessions have now been released, where the Hindu activists openly confess about government's cooperation in the killings. Do such confessions have potential to reignite the violence in the state, or do they promote human rights, Dr. Nusari?
Well, see, we all know this, what has happened. It was, I think, February 2001 when the massacre of the Muslims took place, preceded by the Godhra train incident that also was engineered by Mr. Modi. A report has come out that the way he projected that the Muslims attacked, they all turned out to be false. Nowadays in the media they say that Modi gave them 3 days. This is a very common knowledge of everybody in Gujarat and even in India. Modi told the police and the hoodlum that he brought from out of the state that you have 3 days, you can clean as much as you can. So they were given 3 days and 3 nights, free hand, bullets, bombs, whatever you want. I mean, even the trucks have supplied them gasoline to burn the Muslim properties.
What good does it do, Sherry, to reveal 5 years later that the Hindu activists hacked Muslims to death or burnt their bodies? The evidence has been destroyed now.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth disclosing the footage and saying, we were directed by the government to do what we did?
Well, that doesn't absolve the people who did what they did from guilt. There is no moral right to destroy the moral rights of other people. We often see that sort of thing happening in international relations where people claim to have a right to kill somebody else based on tribal conflicts, religious conflicts, and that sort of thing. I think the people have a right to know what happened, but any government that engages in that sort of activity loses their moral standing to exist.
Mrs. Chawla, I mean, Holocaust happened 50, 60 years ago. We are still hunting the Nazis, aren't we?
Yes.
So how this crime in any way?
No, the point here is, had the confessions about the government's hand in the killings come out at the time earlier, I mean, the culprits might have been punished right away.
Well, the head of the culprit is still there. I think we need, our hands need to reach to his neck and bring him to justice. I think that will be fair enough. If there are plenty of people, we can even capture them today if our hand can go, if our hands can reach to the neck of Mr. Modi.
Well, there's some benefit now in this revelation. It does build a barrier against a repetition of the incident, at least by the same people who would probably be willing to do it right now if they could.
Ambassador, let me tell you one thing. It will happen again. Mark my words. It will happen again unless we take, international community take a firm action. Government of India, the central government of India is so impotent. Everything happened in front of the electronic media, well documented. Modi at least should have been dismissed from his position. President rule should have been imposed, and then they should have had the inquiry. If he found to be innocent, let him go. I mean, there's no buts and ifs. But if he was found to be involved and responsible, he should have been punished. And because we did not take any action, this thing is going to happen. See what happened to Yugoslavia when we bombed them and bombed and scooped this fellow, Slobodan Milosevic. We brought him to the world court. Unfortunately, he died before we could provide him with justice. I think the same thing should have happened here. I was really hoping one day that our forces, forget about Indian forces, they cannot provide the justice to the minorities and to the people like Modi. I think our forces should have scooped to Gandhinagar, swooped to Gandhinagar, scoop Mr. Modi from his bed, handcuff him and bring him to the world court.
Okay.
Let him try as an international criminal. If he's found innocent, let him go, by all means.
George, the issue has been very sensitive in Gujarat, and the government channels have been blocking such stories, such revelations.
Right.
And perhaps to avoid reigniting the violence in Gujarat. Is it helpful now that such revelations would result in some constructive actions?
Oh, absolutely. They have to be. You have to establish a pattern of exposure, even if you don't ultimately bring the culprits to justice. The fact that you can't hide these kinds of things, that with all of the power that the government has, they can't suppress it. It may have taken 5 years for this to come out, but it will come out. It does come out. And maybe the next time it'll come out sooner. The fact that there's a resonance in the story, that people are paying attention, that's very important. That's really what you're trying to accomplish with these exposures, to get people to understand that ultimately there was a wrong here, they accept it as a wrong, and if they don't correct it, then it will happen to another group or another or another.
Well, let me take you back to 1984 when the massacre of the Sikhs. I mean, they were a small community, 5 million people concentrated in one state. They were basically wiped out. The guy who led the mobs to lynch the Sikhs in the streets, on the train, on the trucks, he said clearly, I'm referring to Mr. Bhagat in New Delhi, he said that I am the one who killed these guys. He is still free. Nobody has ever touched him anything. After that, 1992, Muslims were massacred across the India after the destruction of Babri Masjid. You know, your own place has been destroyed and then you are killed. We didn't do anything. Then this Gujarat thing came, and there are on the smaller scale, these things are happening on day-to-day basis. Unless the international community takes a firm stand against these criminals, I mean, it doesn't matter who they are. Mr. Modi was the chief minister, Bajpayee was the prime minister, Advani was the vice president of that country. They all had the hand in this matter.
We're going to get off on a tangent here. You're addressing a lot of the shortcomings of the current democracy in India. And we can have several programs to discuss that. The question is, should these disclosures, public disclosures of past wrongs, be revealed? Should they be pursued? Should they be prosecuted? Absolutely. And it's not until you get these little stories out and you get small groups of people to resonate and say this is wrong, that you will, until that happens, at the grassroots, you will not be able to bring these people to justice.
I think Dr. Ansari's point has been incorrect, is that such stories, revelations, are generally dismissed as political conspiracy or a foreign hand at work in India.
That's correct.
And because of that, these stories never result in any constructive action. And even people tend to believe after a while, government spin, that was just a political conspiracy, or maybe it was Pakistan's hand at work, or maybe it was US that is trying to create some kind of controversy.
Well, if that's the case, how would it be helpful to bring in international observers or international interventions to bring these people to justice? Wouldn't that just feed that paranoia and that perception that this is all being stirred up from
Frankly,
the outside?
I was born in India. I was raised, I have a lot of good Hindu friends, but I was raised among the Hindus. And I tell you one thing, if you let them operate without any questions, without any punishment, they will keep on operating. And since these BJP came to the power, they have a huge number of these terrorists. I use the word terrorists, you may not agree with it, but BJP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, they all are vying to create a destruction of the all minorities, not only Muslims, but all minorities. They have more grudge against the Muslims because we have ruled India for 700 years. But I was trying to say, when in 1984 Sikhs were massacred, have we punished anybody? International community need to take a firm stand and tell the government of India this kind of behavior, whether in one state against one community, one minority, or one majority, should never be accepted.
Let me have Ambassador Dean. Do you think, I mean, the government has wasted a lot of money in inquiries and investigations on this sensitive matter? Do you think any more investigations are needed if the perpetrators of the crime are admitting and confessing on the TV with the video footage, yes, we did it, and we were directed by the head of the state to do what we did? Any more investigations needed, or can they not be punished as such?
Well, it's time for government action, I would say, obviously, according to the facts in this matter, because I know Indian Muslims are not convinced that the government will prosecute events of this kind because it's not done often. Now, investigating further can be done in a trial in which they put these people on trial but not simply in the abstract. So
I think if you have revelations of